We are on a Wednesday, the day after World War III. How do y'all feel? I was thinking about it. AJ and I were kidding around about it as we were coming to air. And I was thinking if there'd been a drama movie, because if you watched the news all day yesterday, it was drama, drama, drama about the end of the world. It's going to be the end of civilization. And the media still hung up on that word. Trump talks a little trash, and they've still got their feelings hurt, man. They were in a twist today in the presidential news conference. And so, considering all that happened and didn't happen yesterday, as we wound up our show, of course, the word about a potential ceasefire came out. Then we've had all this back and forth about it. I'm going to get you updated here in a minute, but it's just funny to me. If this were AJ, if yesterday was World War III, and this is how the movie went, everybody just watches TV and looks at their stock market and then goes to lunch, and then today is the day after World War III. And everybody's like watching the TV, checking the stock market, going to lunch. It hadn't really affected us too much, except for the price of gas. All these people are just in a twist, and people so ramped up and emotional. So here's the latest. Of course, we had the announcement yesterday that Trump would agree to a ceasefire. And then we had CNN lead the effort to put out a fake 10-point talking list of things that allegedly Team Trump had agreed to, which were absurd. No rational human being could look at that list and think that we'd ever agree to that. But they were eager to say that because it would look like a cave by the Trump administration. So they started reporting it. And they put it out everywhere. And it wasn't anywhere close to what had been back channeled because they were getting propaganda and quick to spit it out, as they've done since this damn thing started. Today, Caroline Leavitt said the president immediately threw that thing in the trash. That's not something we're going to agree to, folks. Oh, wait. So anyway, so we had the agreement, and then we had something of a ceasefire, and then immediately Iran started firing missiles at everybody around its neighbors, and then Israel decided to keep going against Lebanon. Now, what we heard yesterday, this gets complex, is that Lebanon was not part of this peace deal. Neither was Israel. Israel was consulted, but the Iranians through the Pakistanians were negotiating with the United States. And I asked that question yesterday. I said, where's Israel? Are they going to stop it because they're part of this equation? And apparently it was all in consultation. But Israel decided to keep shooting at threats it perceives along the southern border of, their northern border, the southern border of Lebanon. They want to keep shooting into those terrorist Hezbollah regions and continue the decapitation. So they did. That pissed off the Iranians. And then they get on state TV today and say, well, we're going to close the strait again. And they really didn't, because ships are going through there today. They're just saying that. Now, you got to understand there are two environments right now. And they talked about this in the presidential briefing today. There's the back channel environment where the real talking points are being negotiated. And by the way, we learned today that the president is going to send his chief negotiating team that handles all this stuff. They did the trade talks, and now they're doing this, trying to wind down the situation with Iran during the 2 weeks. So they're all going this weekend. It'd be J.D. Vance and Witkoff and that whole team. They're going for direct talks with intermediaries to deal with this and try to come to some agreement that could be the beginning of maybe the end of this thing. So what we saw yesterday wasn't clearly the end of everything, but there's a lot of optimism built into the fact that we have stopped shooting, at least for the moment. And there's some advantages to that. Now, there's some people that are hardliners and want us to just keep pressing until the regime is completely knocked out. And I listen to those people argue. Then you got people that have been hand-wringing since the day we did it because they can't understand. They're just not educated on the history of this country very well, or think it's just another country. I don't know. What's funny to me also, this occurred to me today, is to listen to leftists try to say that Iran is no threat. Their nuclear ambitions were not a threat to us. Well, what the hell was Obama working on the whole time he was president? Why was he shoveling them cash and cutting deals and back channeling with 3-foot peanut head John Kerry in secret diplomatic missions and overt diplomatic missions? What was he doing all that for? It was the Iranian threat. They've always been a threat. Every president that has come along since 1979 has known this. It's just that they subsequently have become more and more dangerous, and here we are, and you see how dangerous they can be. So, is the strait open or not? We've got visual evidence of ships going through. The Iranians, and I told you about the two different media environments. One is what they're going to say publicly, because I'm telling you, the Iranian government, through whatever spokespeople they have, through whatever decision making leaders they've got left, have to keep up a tough guy image, or their people are going to rebel on them, and they're trying to hold off on that last phase. I believe this next 2 weeks could be the opening for that. A cessation of the bombing campaign could work in the favor of some people on the ground actually putting pressure on their government from the bottom up. I haven't heard anybody talk about that today, but that's something that makes sense to me. We'll see how it plays out. But the Iranian government can't look like they've bowed down, bent the knee, or weakened, or throwing their hands up, because that's going to encourage their own citizens to rebel the minute their citizens spot a crack in the wall of their government, at least domestically on the ground. So they're going to keep saying things like, "We made the great Satan bow down to us. The end of the war was our choosing." And none of that's real. Nobody believes that. They've lost their entire military. They've lost all their ability to produce weapons, their research factories, or their R&D facilities, their manufacturing facilities for both their drone program and their missiles. All of it's gone. They couldn't threaten anybody right now except for whatever they've got left hidden in tunnels and in different places. And they'll still have that offensive capability, but at the moment they've lost that, so they can't threaten the world. They've turned their attention inward, and they're just trying to hold on domestically. We forget that. So many people are arguing about their debate with us and our debate with them. They've got trouble at home, and they've had trouble at home. The economy sucks. Their infrastructure's crumbling, and they've had this war that was brought on by their ambitions and incalcitrance, which people in that country never wanted to begin with. And the next 2 weeks could be pivotal to the overall direction. I think they'll come to some agreement. I'm not sure if we're going to start hostilities again. We can flat out do it. And here's another point to make about that. I was listening to a former military general talk last night, and we underestimate how exhausted some of our troops on those ships. They're on those aircraft carriers. They've been working nonstop for close to 40 days. In the run up to this, that one of our aircraft carriers had to get turned all the way around. It was about to go home on leave. They had been on an extended mission. They had to extend their service at sea, get into the region. These people are up 24 hours a day, launching ships, launching missiles, doing their thing, taking care of the ship itself. They're exhausted too. Not that they didn't have any fight left in them. They've been impeccable. And then they were the pause, and then this dramatic rescue mission, which was so. You think we were tense watching it at home on television? You think about being on one of those aircraft carriers and being part of that mission, hoping everybody comes back. You just can't escape the drama from last weekend over that. So I think this is a good chance for our guys to rest up, get a little R&R. I heard somebody call it spring break yesterday. These are young folks. Get in touch with folks back home. Let us do some resupply. And then if we need to hit go again, we hit go again. It's actually good for us. Diplomatically, we get this pause to maybe negotiate something and get this thing moving on, as long as the strait stays open. So how are we doing on that? That tends to be everything on the economic side of the equation. Right now, the stock market, it immediately went to 1,200 this morning. That's what the futures had shown all night, right after the confirmation of the ceasefire. And I've been watching these two numbers just almost for 6 straight weeks now. Last night I was looking at the futures for today, and it went straight to 1,200 and opened that way, and it's kind of stayed that way. Oil had an immediate drop after this announcement. I think it was about $115, and it dropped down to the low 90s, and it's kind of hung out there all day. There are some optimistic market analysts that say as soon as this 2-week period is up, that it's going to drop back down to 70, and we could use that relief ahead of summertime. But we got to see how these negotiations go, and no one can predict it. Today I've heard some so-called pundits who are just wrapped in conventional thinking. They just so caught up in conventional thinking, and they're dealing with an unconventional president, dealing with a maniac terror regime or whatever's left of it. Nobody's going to be able to predict this. Trump's whole trademark is being unpredictable, and we're dealing with these crazy people in Iran who have been unpredictable since 1979, but kind of yet predictable. So it'll be good drama. It'll be good to watch. At least your portfolio, if you got anything invested in the stock market, looks a little better this afternoon. It's the second run up in 2 weeks. Of course, we've had some down days, but they haven't been as dramatically down as the up days. And this, of course, is another one of those up days. So we're crawling our way back to 48,000. You know, the peak was a few weeks ago when we were at 50. We'll see where it winds up, at least on the Dow. So lots to watch. And in this back and forth developing situation, it's nighttime over there. That's the time when there tend to be the back and forth attacks. We think the UAE might have gotten involved today and did a hit on Iran on their own. As you know, Arab nation to Arab nation to Persian nation, but nonetheless, regional squabbles that are the fallout from this as Iran continued to attack its neighbors. But these are historic times, and the upside to all of this when we're all done, it just could pay dividends for decades. If you want to be optimistic about it, if you want to be a hand wringer, do that thing, man. Wring your hands and live your life that way. I choose optimism, and I'm feeling good today because yesterday was pretty dramatic, and somehow AJ, we all survived. How you doing, man? You
man,
good?
I'm too blessed to be depressed, man. I'm good.
Thought you might say that. Anything new with you? Let's do some pleasantries before I dig back into the crazy stuff.
I was gonna pull myself out. I was marked safe from World War III, so I'm good.
Marked safe. You should do that online. Yeah, you should tell everybody you survived it yesterday.
Yeah.
If you watched Fox News yesterday, the world was about to end.
Yeah.
They had all but said we're about to launch nuclear weapons and everybody was going to die. And who? I mean. Have these people been paying attention the last 10 years to how Trump operates? Have they read any of his books so they understand trash talk and leverage? Come on, man.
Look, I played every song from like I Am a Survivor. I played songs from Survivor. So yeah, I'm feeling good. I feel motivated.
Now tomorrow could be, because today's the day after, tomorrow could be
right.
World War 3.5. And so Iran could do something stupid. We could be right back at it. I mean, it's that fragile, and it really is. I think it was J.D. Vance that called it a fragile peace, sort of this fragile temporary peace. But I'll take that considering all that we've had to pay attention to. All right, so let's get cranked up and going. That'll get us started on a Wednesday. Of course, plenty of phone calls today. We'll lean on the phones and let y'all get in here with your comments and thoughts and bring you the breaking headlines like we do every day. Douglas Cooling and Heating, next up on the list. These are the folks that can absolutely help you with. I always start with the preventive maintenance because that's the cheapest thing. The little service call to clean everything up and test the fittings and the pressures, and I don't know what the heck they do in there. They'll go around your house and check the registers, but they check out your whole system and sort of give it a little spa day to make sure it's running efficiently, and that helps you all summer long. When that thing can breathe, and it's running at peak efficiency, it holds your power bills down, the unit's going to last longer if it's not struggling. But if it's struggling, if it can't breathe, if it's gunked up, you're going to pay for it in the end. That's just true. So do that maintenance. And sometimes you need a little nudge to do that kind of stuff. And then, of course, there are the new installs that they're so good at. I'll be getting them to do that for me this summer, adding a little additional space. I'm going to need some more capacity, so they're going to help me with that project. And they've been with me. I've been with them for I'm going on 17 years now. It's amazing. I'm counting life in decades now, even with my business relationships. These are folks you can trust to work on your system and keep this. Remember this number in case you do have an emergency, because they do have an emergency line. All of that is at calldouglas.com. You can go to that website and immediately find the phone number. Plumbing as well for emergency plumbing stuff. They got a plumbing division. J. Douglas just has a great company, and y'all will appreciate how they treat you. We all need a good specialist when it comes to heating and air. CallDouglas.com, CallDouglas.com. Back here in just a minute. All right, y'all get back in here, lead on live. AJ, all hell's breaking loose over here. I got one of those spam calls right in the middle of having to sneeze, just as you had put me back on camera. Did you see me sneeze? I managed to turn the microphone off so I didn't blow everybody out. That thing came out of nowhere. I think it's pollen, man. Every day I start with that, but it's all in here. Man, maybe we'll be done with it at some point. Alabama Bass bringing you the show tonight. Let's talk. Some of you, if you are getting, well, look, you don't even have to be older. Your bathtub's just slippery. Any of us are vulnerable to fall in there if you've got one of those bathtub shower combo systems that you use. And a lot of houses were built that way. It's just out of date. Even if you don't have the latest surface technology that keeps you from slipping in there or an easier entry, it's a little dicey. Better hang on. Alabama Bass, they do so many things. They'll blow out your whole bathroom and make it all look beautiful. But one of the things we've talked about for years with Mike and Sandra and Jill and John and Dewey and all those guys are these tub replacement systems. They're just gorgeous. Their product is better than their big corporate competitors. It just is. It is slip proof. They're beautifully designed. This doesn't look like a hospital setup when you're going through stuff. Like we used to call it a handicap bathroom. It doesn't look like that. It's very beautiful. Lots of glass, beautiful framing, but designed smartly, ergonomically, so you can steady yourself in there with the proper shelving and handles so you're reaching for your stuff. You got your stuff in the shower. You got to be able to get to it. Even the plumbing fixtures themselves are thought through for ease of use. Man, you can get that part of your life back without having to worry about it or put off. Some people just put off getting a shower because you dread going to do it. Or you got a family member that's going through some things in life or getting a little older and losing a step, and you want them to be more secured. This is a wonderful, I think this is a life-changing gift if you and your siblings want to do this for mama or dad so they can stay in the home they love and age in place and do so at a fair price. Mike and them are just going to give you the best price right up front, no games. You can take your time and make a decision on that. They're not going to pressure you. When they come to put this system in, it only takes them 2 days. There are some companies that will try to say, well, we'll do it in 1 day. You can physically put it in there in 1 day, but if you don't come back and pressure test, the next day you're not doing the job right. So they're honest at Alabama Bath. They'll tell you it'll take 2 days. And they'll also swap, by the way, tub for a tub. If you want to keep your tub, but you want a new one of those walk-in easy entry tubs, let them do that for you too. AlabamaBass.com. They're over in Pelham, AlabamaBass.com. All right, so Trump has NATO in the White House today. I don't know if we're going to see any news conferences. Maybe there was one a little bit earlier. Inevitably, if he gets in front of a camera today, he's going to have something to say, especially about NATO and how spectacularly those nations have failed. And, you know, it's just one thing that has caused them to be in this position, and we've talked about it. Not only is that the NATO model was necessary after World War II, the Western powers had to unite to fight off a potential Soviet threat. Eventually, the Soviet threat would go away. The expansion of communism was the main thing that they were there to help this mutual assurance that was created for the NATO powers at that time. And then, of course, they had many other reasons to be mutually protective of each other. But NATO and the European nations in particular, because, of course, we've gotten into Turkey and some other countries now, Eastern Bloc nations and all that. But NATO's been a political football since then. Even in this situation with Ukraine and Russia, one of the big beefs for Russia invading Ukraine in the beginning was this perpetual notion that Ukraine could be allowed into NATO, putting NATO right on Russia's border, and they just weren't going to ever allow that. So I think they invaded in part to stave that off. You know, of course, during the Biden administration when they spotted weakness in our part. So NATO is always going to be a political football. We've got countries within it. We've had calls in the last few days that have talked about we should just get completely out. And Trump's going to threaten that. I don't think he'll do it because there's still some very valuable nations in the alliance that are good for us strategically, geographically, economically, that we need to be able to work with. And it's a strength. But I'm telling you, the nations that failed us wouldn't allow us to use airspace, wouldn't allow us to use landing strips in our own facilities that we'd built in those places. We need to think about what to do about that. Perhaps we just pull our troops completely out. Just pull them out. How long have we been in Germany? Let's just leave. And because they're living off our protection, our presence is a deterrent in those nations, and we're spending money to keep that up. There are other options that are rather than just dissolving the whole chamber. But I'll be interested to see how the meetings went, and they could not be more spectacularly timed. Just as we're working on trying to wind down the situation with Iran, right after many of the larger NATO nations just wouldn't lift a finger to help. They're going to need us, and maybe we won't lift a finger to help. That frightens them. Back here in just a minute. Stay tuned. I was just mentioning the negotiations this weekend, and JD Vance, he is live right now about to board Air Force Two. Actually, he's in Budapest, Hungary, but I think he's going to be redirected this weekend. He's speaking. Let's listen into JD right now live.
I think it's a good first step. We're going to see if we can make more progress here in the days to come.
Can I ask you about Lebanon?
Go ahead, yeah.
Because there seems to be a disagreement about whether Lebanon was included in this proposal. And the Speaker of the Parliament, who you're going to sit across from the table from in Islamabad, has just said that he thinks negotiations would be unreasonable while that war is ongoing. So would you ask Israel to hold off strikes to allow some space for these talks?
Well, first of all, I know there's been some conversations between the Israelis and the leadership of our country today. I haven't been involved in that because I've been busy doing stuff in Hungary. I'm actually update when I get on the plane. But let me say a couple things. First of all, I actually think, and there's a lot of bad faith negotiation and a lot of bad faith, propaganda going on. I think this comes from a legitimate misunderstanding. I think the Iranians thought that the ceasefire included Lebanon, and it just didn't. We never made that promise. We never indicated that was going to be the case. What we said is that the ceasefire would be focused on Iran, and the ceasefire would be focused on America's allies, both Israel and the Gulf Arab states. That said, the Israelis, as I understand it, again, I'm supposed to get a fuller report when I get on the plane, have actually offered to be, frankly, to check themselves a little bit in Lebanon because they want to make sure that our negotiation is successful. That's not because that is part of the ceasefire. I think that's the Israelis trying to set us up for success, and we'll, of course, see how that unfolds in the next few days. But, look, if Iran wants to let this negotiation fall apart in a conflict where they were getting hammered over Lebanon, which has nothing to do with them and which the United States never once said was part of the ceasefire, that's ultimately their choice. We think that would be dumb, but that's their choice.
Mr. Vice President, Iran continues to block the Straits of Hormuz. Do you have an expectation of when that strait is going to be open?
Well, we've already seen an increase in traffic today. Hopefully we'll see an increase in traffic tomorrow. We actually think that we are seeing signs that the Straits is starting to reopen. I think you guys have probably seen oil prices have come down, so I think the oil markets, the gas markets are seeing the same thing. But the president's very, very clear. The deal is a ceasefire, a negotiation. That's what we give. And what they give is the Straits are going to be reopened. If we don't see that happening, the president is not going to abide by our terms if the Iranians are not abiding by their terms.
Mr. Vice President, Carol Levitt said you played a key role in these talks. Could you help understand some details about that role? And do you think your well-known opposition to foreign wars generally was a factor that made you a key player in this?
Well, I appreciate Carolyn saying that. I mean, my key role was I sat on the phone a lot. I answered a lot of phone calls. I made a lot of phone calls. And again, I'm happy about where we are. I think the president has struck a good deal for the American people. But fundamentally, the Iranians have got to take the next step, or the president has a lot of options to go back to the war.
Do you know if Iranians requested that you join the talks?
I don't know that. I would be surprised if that was true. But, I wanted to be involved because I thought I could make a difference. And obviously, I think the people really on the ground doing the day-to-day negotiating have been Steve and Jared. They've done a great job. But we're going to keep on working this as a team, as we always have. Pete's been very helpful at the various military elements of this. Marco's obviously been extremely involved. We work as a team. We work effectively. And, I've been on the phone a lot the past couple of days, but we're glad to be where we are.
Mr. Vice President, how is the United States accomplishing its stated objective of ensuring Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon ever if they still have highly enriched uranium?
And what's the plan to get the uranium out?
Well, look, this is one of the things, it's going to be one of the main subjects of negotiation is that we want Iran to not be able to make a nuclear weapon. We want the nuclear fuel, which is something the president has made very clear. And there's, again, the way to think about this is the United States has certain demands and certain things that we want. The Iranians have things they can get out of the negotiation. The more that they're willing to give us, I think the more they're going to get things out of this negotiation. The president's talked about sanctions relief. The president's talked about economic partnerships and things like that. That's not going to happen unless the Iranians make a firm commitment to stop anything close to the development of a nuclear weapon. And frankly, the president has all the cards here. We've got a lot of leverage. We've got a lot of things that we can do. But right now, I think that we're in a good spot.
Is the to wipe Iranian civilization off the map still on the table? And is it fair to keep 90 million Iranians under that threat for the actions of their leaders?
Well, look, the leadership is really to blame for the condition of the country in Iran. The President of the United States has made very clear that the United States has a lot of leverage here. We have economic leverage. We've got military leverage. What he's trying to do is make sure the American people are safe and strike a deal that's good for the American people. I encourage the Iranians to come to the table seriously. We've seen some signs that they're going to do that. We've seen some signs of bravado. Fundamentally, we're in a good spot. They're reopening the straits. We have a ceasefire. And frankly, if they break their end of the bargain, then they're going to see some serious consequences.
But wiping them off the map is different than an economic leverage or military leverage. Why is that kind of language useful in this kind of scenario?
Well, again, the President of the United States is saying that unless the Iranians do the right thing, he is going to have some serious consequences for the regime. We obviously don't want the people of Iran to suffer, but we have a lot of leverage the President of the United States could use, and it's why I think it's so important for the Iranians to be negotiators in good faith.
Okay, buzz the last couple of days with the Free Press story saying that senior Pentagon officials in January, including Rich Colby, brought Cardinal Pierre into the Pentagon.
Brought who?
Cardinal Christophe Pierre into the Pentagon.
I haven't seen the story, unfortunately.
And essentially the reporting by the Free Press is that they told him that the American military has a lot of might and they can do whatever they want, and the church should get on its side. Does that message sound correct to you? Is that something you would sign off on?
So one, I with no disrespect to the Cardinal, I don't know who Cardinal Christophe Pierre is.
He's the ambassador to the Holy See and the U.S.
Oh, okay. I do. I've met him before. Sorry, I just didn't remember the name. I've never seen this reporting. I'd like to actually talk to Cardinal Christophe Pierre and, frankly, to our people to figure out what actually happened. I think it's always a bad idea to offer an opinion on stories that are unconfirmed and uncorroborated, so I'm not going to do that.
Arthur, on the question of Iran's enriched uranium, do you see a scenario in which the administration may be willing to agree to allow Iran to continue enriching uranium for civilian nuclear purposes?
Well, look, what the president has said is that we don't want Iran to have the capacity to build a nuclear weapon. The president's also said that we don't want Iran enriching towards a nuclear weapon, and we want Iran to give up the nuclear fuel. Those are going to be our demands during the negotiation. And again, we're going to see what the Iranians are willing to give up. If they make a good faith effort to actually give us the things that we need to have a successful negotiation for the security of the American people, I think there's a lot on the other end. If they don't give us what we need, then I think it's going to be bad. But I'm optimistic that the Iranians are going to be smart, that they're going to negotiate in good faith.
And your negotiating partner in Iran, I know Kevin sort of asked about this already, but he essentially is saying that they're distrustful of the U.S. for, he tweeted out that 3 of the 10 points in the ceasefire framework have already. They're distrustful of the U.S. What do you make of him tweeting that out before negotiations?
So I thought it was interesting, actually, because I did see that tweet from Ghalibaf actually just a couple of minutes ago. And let me say a few things. First of all, he said that there are a few points of disagreement before the negotiation. Well, that must mean that there's a lot of points of agreement because there's a 15-point plan floating around. There's a 10-point plan floating around. If he's frustrated about 3 issues, that actually means that there's a lot of agreement. That's point number 1. Point number 2, to respond to each of those issues, and I read it very closely, let me just say this. I actually wonder how good he is at understanding English, because there are things that he said that frankly didn't make sense in the context of the negotiations that we've had. But to address the 3 points, first of all, he talked about an attack that had allegedly happened on Iran and how that was a violation of the ceasefire. Ceasefires are always messy. An hour after the president announced the ceasefire, the Iranians launched a bunch of missiles. Then the Israelis responded. Then some of the Gulf Arab states responded. This is the nature of a ceasefire. No ceasefire ever goes without a little bit of choppiness. What we have been very clear about is that we want to stop the bombing. We want our allies to stop the bombing, and we want the Iranians to do the same thing. We're seeing evidence that things are going in the right direction, but it's going to take a little time. The second thing Ghalibaf said, which again I found fascinating, is he said, we refuse to give up the right to enrichment. And I thought to myself, you know what? My wife has the right to skydive. But she doesn't jump out of an airplane because she and I have an agreement that she's not going to do that because I don't want my wife jumping out of an airplane. we don't really concern ourselves with what they claim they have the right to do. We concern ourselves with what they actually do. And I think the president's been very clear on the enrichment question. Our position on that has not changed. I think the third thing that he said was Lebanon. Okay, and again, I actually think that is a reasonable misunderstanding, but neither us nor the Israelis said that was going to be part of the ceasefire. Again, we're working with people to try to get through some of these things, but it's really fundamentally, we're on the right track. We got a lot more to do. We got a lot more that the Iranians are going to have to accept as part of this negotiation, but I think we've got a strong hand and we're going to play it well. Thank you all. Have a safe trip back.
The talks won't happen.
All right.
That, of course, is pretty dang remarkable with some clarity. Now, we haven't heard Trump to that extent negotiate or talk in public about all this stuff directly. He did have Caroline Leavitt come out and speak today. But Vance, I thought, really made that very clear and very succinct. It's unambiguous, and it's where we are. There's hope. We're in a decent position. Everything that happened after yesterday has been positive, despite the fact that there's a 24/7 sort of information manufacturing machine that includes a lot of the American left media and some of the Iranian propaganda crowd that want to poo-poo all of this. What their biggest fear is that it's going to work. They're afraid peace is going to break out and they won't be able to use this issue again. And we'll continue to monitor it this afternoon. Something else struck me while listening to J.D. Vance, and it was just kind of because you're thinking of him and his capability. And let me just start with him and the upcoming presidential election. He's getting the most incredible experience, I believe, than any vice president we've had in a long time. Let me try to put that into to make some sense out of that. We know Trump is in the end of his term. He can only serve 2 terms. He's done. And so it's going to be a wide open race. Generally, any vice president is going to be naturally probably the front runner from the beginning. He and Marco Rubio are still seemingly getting along great. Inevitably, there'll be some rivalries and people to try to divide those two. But I think about their talent level, their articulation level, the leadership skills they're getting because they're working for a president that is bold and engaged everywhere all over the world simultaneously. And we all have seen the memes about Rubio and how many jobs and how many hats he wears. And I got to thinking about just a few months ago, I got to do some math here, but less than about 16 months ago, our vice president was Kamala Harris and our Secretary of State was Antony Blinken. This may have been the best upgrade in those positions I've ever seen. And I mean this isn't about identity or even party. They were completely incapable people put in those roles for various reasons. Harris, we all know why. Biden told us it was an identity thing. And then Blinken, he's the one that rounded up the letter for Biden with those intelligence people to try to get the heat off Hunter Biden. And he was rewarded with Secretary of State. And the guy was completely a buffoon. He was completely incapable of negotiating anything that approaches any of this stuff. And now with both Rubio out there on the tip of the spear and Vance can be deployed anywhere in the world, like we see now he's heading to Islamabad this weekend. That's amazing because they trust him to put him out on the edge of that, send him with the negotiation team, and execute the deal. Both of these men are getting incredible experience to tee them up for one heck of a situation coming up in 2028. The best odds, I guess, would be for them to work together and try to serve or run as a ticket. Both of them are young enough to do that. At the present moment, I would prefer Rubio Vance rather than Vance Rubio, but he was really good in that moment just now. And I'm not just blowing sunshine. I'm always impressed with his ability to think on his feet, articulate. The problem with being a vice president is you've got to assume the voice of the president and not get in the way. You can't trip up your own president. You've got to, even if you disagree, your job as vice president is to support the president and carry out the person that was elected, carry out their philosophy and their administration that way and work as a team. And Vance has to do that. And he's doing it very well. I was impressed with that. And it made me even more optimistic that something's going to get worked out this weekend, or at least we'll make progress with him being on the negotiation team. All right, man, that I didn't even expect that to show up this afternoon. We stay on the breaking stuff. All American Metal's bringing you the show tonight, aa-metal.com. Y'all, if you are growing this year, whether at home and you want to finally build that barn or that shed or that thing that you need that could be done with a steel building, let's go. Good times to do all that stuff. And All American Metal will just, if you've never done a project like this, they can, because they're turnkey from the design all the way through the delivery of the building, they're in control of all of it. They have their own factories. They make all the components. It is seamless when they're handling your project, and you're going to get a better deal. Custom design work, better pricing, a quicker turnaround. Some of these bigger companies are just dragging it out. They'll help you all along the way, even give you good advice on some other parts that are not even their job. Hooking you up with contractors to make it vertical, all that kind of stuff. Reach out to them. And of course, commercially, some of you may already have a steel building. You get the value of it, but it's time to grow. It's time to add on. It's time to build something new and push that business forward. You're going to need space. It's All American Metals. They do big warehouses. They can do anything. A giant warehouse space all the way down to just a private property, pole barn or a shed or something like that. It's aa-metal.com. Their factories are all around Birmingham, and I think they even have them all the way up to Coleman. It's aa-metal.com, aa-metal.com. Y'all go reach out to them. Back here in just a minute. All right, y'all get back in here, Leland Live, Talk 99.5. Hey, Jay, this other camera's going fuzzy again. Let me see what I can do about this. Sometimes that thing just does what it wants to. All right, there we go. There we go. All right, we back. Y'all welcome back in. Leland Live, Talk 99.5. Them adding cameras to a radio show has been an adventure. It's Lania's Furniture up next now. What a wonderful store here comes spring. I don't know about you, but I'm outside, I'm inside. We're sprucing up, getting ready to just, it's that time of year when you just want everything to be fresh and new. If you're in that mode too, go see them at Lonnie's. One of the easiest things to do to change out things at your house. You don't have to tear out walls and repaint the whole house. Maybe just change up the furniture a little bit. They've got quality stuff, beautiful stuff, and they always do. That's why they've been around for 93 years. It's not just one of those places that, it's kind of a little overpriced and then they run a sale. Some stores work like that. They'll mark it up 200% and then bring it back down to 100% and say they have 50% off sale. You're still paying 100%. The prices are good for the quality and the brands and the value that you get always. Every time you go in there, you go, okay, that looks good. I can do that. Lonnie's Furniture Company. Y'all reach out to them right off exit 280. I say it that way on purpose because I don't want to make y'all think it's on 280. It's exit 280 in Kimberly, Alabama, just right off the exit, about a mile down from the exit. Y'all go see them. Easy in, easy out. Great team. Wonderful staff. So helpful. And the biggest selection you're going to find in Alabama, period. Lonnie'sFurnitureCompany.com, LAUNIUS, Lonnie'sFurnitureCompany.com. All right, let me get Mike in here. He's going to be our first caller of the day. We've got a little minute or two. As the markets come to a close, we'll give you the update on that after the top of the hour. Mike, what's on your mind tonight, buddy?
Well, I despise NATO. I was stationed in Germany for 2 years, and they act like that we shouldn't have even been over there. And they were rude, and same way with France. I've been to France, and they were rude and stuff. We ought to get out of there. They're a bunch of moochers anyway. I despise them. Go Trump. Thank you. Have a good day.
All right, Mike just dropped a bomb right there and took off. Yeah, I've visited. I've been, in parts of Europe over the years, and I had a friend that was I had a former family member who was in the Air Force, and he took me by the NATO facility over. I think it was in Norfolk. It's fascinating. All this stuff is fascinating. The alliance we had and what it meant. But honestly, some of those ties that bind. Let's just talk about NATO for a minute as we head to the top. They are cultural ties, family ties, a kinship with that part of the world. Cultural ties. The contribution to our culture here in America has come from all over the world. You go to any major city and you've got a little Italy and a Chinese market, and you've got French influence and, of course, British influence and Irish influence. And it's just kind of part of what ties us with all these countries. But those countries themselves are changing in a radical, very abrupt way as they are dealing with the unbelievable stuff right now in cultural shifts, crime spikes. It's global, unchecked, unfettered global migration from the third world that is a complete antithesis of their traditional culture. And so their leaders are afraid of the newcomers. They are fearful of these people. I've been telling you this for 2 weeks, and they're afraid politically. It's a political calculus. And let's reverse engineer that. That's why the globalists wanted to run these people into Western nations to begin with, is to change the political landscape. And you can see it working in real time in Europe. You can see it working in real time in the United States, particularly in Minnesota, and the scandals and the corruption and the culture shock that has become St. Paul and Minneapolis from a heavy concentration of people from other parts of the world. Whether it's good or bad, and you can judge that for yourself, whether you think it enhances their population or it doesn't, it's different. And it changes the calculus of how people, the local politicians, do things, which is why you have, in our case, in Minneapolis, people looking the other way with all these fake hospice centers and other tax benefited nonprofits and whatnot. You'll have 100 of them in one building. The state officials in Minneapolis knew all about that. I guarantee you Tim Walz understood what was happening, but he was afraid of these people. And they're, in our case, the vote. I don't think he's afraid of a bombing, but he was. They come with great intimidation. I just read a story today where some school system in Tennessee, and I'm not going to name it because I've got to do some homework and verify it, but they're changing their bell schedule, the way the bells ring in the school, to accommodate all the Islamic kids that have moved into the school because they got to do their prayers. And just a few months ago, we were firing football coaches for praying with their football team if they were Christian coaches. You see what I mean? One group is being pushed out and not allowed any accommodation and being told separation of church and state. The other group comes in, and now we got foot baths and change our bell schedule because people are afraid of them. And so Europe has turned into that, and that's part of the NATO problem, the beginning and the end. It's more than just their contribution to their own defense and them being lazy freeloaders, and that's been it for decades, and that's always been an irritant with Trump. But politically, in this moment, when the NATO pact should have defended each other, they failed to step up when requested to step up. And we can argue about whether that was right or wrong. They just didn't do it. And they didn't do it, and that's irritated the Trump team. And now they got the NATO chief here in the United States talking about it. And I think that's going to be a tier 2 story either this afternoon or tomorrow as to how that's going in the direction we're going. The truth is, we've been paying for them for a long time, and now it's time for them to pay their bills and man up or not. Because you know what? They're going to need us. The next time Russia starts screwing around, guess who they're going to call? Uncle Sam. Every time. Back in a minute.